What is up, everybody? Today we're talking weapons in New World and which ones are the most fun. We've got a tier list thing going on over here, so I hope you enjoy this video. Hope you find the information, but just understand all of it is my opinion. You hate it? Tell me in the comments below. Let's go. All right, so as you can see on our tier list, we've got all the weapons that are in New World. This is prior to launch in case you're watching this in the future. So if there's new weapons, new skills, etc., this whole thing could be garbage. But as I've seen over the last year, skills do not move very much in New World. In fact, although some of the numbers might change, I've really experienced no major differences in the weapons patch over patch. I'm sure somebody's gonna hop in the comments and tell me about the big changes they've made, but in reality, the way the weapon works and the fun you have with the weapon hasn't changed much. So we're gonna be kind of going in order of the skills window in New World, starting with our one-handed weapons. I'm gonna put everything in the B tier where I talk about them, and then I'll move them to their appropriate spot. So starting with the first weapon of the game, you've got your sword and shield. Now this is kind of your all-arounder. It does everything and it does it okay. The skills you've got with the sword and shield have some variety and have some animation to them, which makes them interesting between the shield bash and the rush and the spin and the backstab. It's actually a pretty entertaining weapon, but outside of that, there's not a lot here. Again, because it tries to do everything, there's a lot of passive buffs. You know, decrease your stamina a little less, get a little extra health. On your third hit of your combo, do extra damage, but you're talking 10-15%. It certainly matters in the long run, especially as you're talking about larger battles. But from a single player aspect, you just try to have fun in New World here. The sword and shield will get you through everything without doing much else. So I'm gonna leave it in the B tier. This is our basis. This is what we're going off of because this is what you start the game with. Anything from here is making a selection. Fair enough? Fair enough. I'm already gonna get hate. I see it coming already. The second weapon we're going to is the rapier. Rapier, however you pronounce it. Potatoes, okay? The rapier is a dexterity weapon. It also benefits from intelligence. So if you're gonna play a mage and you wanna have a melee weapon, rapier is probably where you're going with this. You could also be, you know, a bow or a musket primarily, but then still have this rapier in the back of your hand. It's a solid melee weapon and its strengths lie in its damage over time and its iframes. You've got the blood skill tree, which focuses on rends and things that will damage your enemy over the long term. And then you've got the grace skill tree, which focuses on being able to move and dodge and kind of just keep your invincibility frames as high as possible. Much like the sword, other than the flashy skills, the rapier suffers from a skill tree full of 5%, 10% type changes. Now, there are a lot of things that stack upon each other, so if you enjoy the damage over time play style, specializing in bleed can be really good for you. You're extending your bleed for certain hits, you're actually dealing additional damage while they bleed. You know, there's a play style there with the rapier. But unfortunately, damage over time tends to be lacking in the fun department. You kind of apply it and then kind of have to run. If you're a PvPer, rapier is not gonna be your friend. Rapier suffers in PvP a lot because you have the ability to heal and you can heal right past all of those bleeds. It really isn't a problem, and the direct damage of the rapier is very, very low. So it's a great defensive weapon if you're a mage because of those iframes. It gives you the ability to attack in a melee setting, but overall, looking at the whole spectrum of weapons, it's not going to score that great. From a fun perspective, it's got to go D tier. Moving into our next single-handed weapon, we got the hatchet. Now, I will tell you, I spent many hours with the hatchet, and this was a controversial weapon. Last year, in the first preview event, the hatchet was OP. The hatchet is a strength weapon, but also benefits from dexterity. You've got your berserker tree, which is going to focus on the melee aspects of the hatchet, and then you've got your throwing tree, which turns it into a ranged weapon. This is your ranged option if you are a strength-based character. And so therefore, in the early preview events, this was sort of OP. It had a lot of damage in a very short amount of time, and you could deal it from a range, so you really didn't need any other weapon in the game. It's fun to play. You've got high damage, high animation style, you've got all the ranged aspects on the throwing side. It's generally a fun weapon. But the hatchet also has a lot of buffs and debuffs associated with it, things you can immediately notice. Things like being cleansed of all your debuffs are instantly visible within the game. Things in the Berserker tree might heal you, things in the throwing tree might cause your enemy to be rend and bleed. There's animation to everything the hatchet does, making it really fun, on top of just all the hacky, slashy stuff that comes with the hatchet. Honestly, it's one of my favorite weapons. It probably still needs to be nerfed more, so it's going in the S tier. Spoiler alert, because it's a strength-based ranged weapon, and there's gonna be some other strength-based weapons that are near the top of the list here, it contributes to an overall fun playstyle. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's talk the two-handed weapons. First up, we have the spear. The spear is one of the newest melee weapons, and they tried to sort of emulate what they were doing with the hatchet, but with a two-handed weapon. The spear has a zoner skill tree, which is where you're focused on kind of making space for yourself. It's sort of a defensive tree. And then you've got impaler, which is more aggressive and attacking the enemy. There's a lot of other weapons we're going to be talking about. The spear sort of takes things from, whether it's throwing mechanics like you have with the hatchet, or it's a whirlwind mechanic like you have with the axe. You've got a knockaway like you have with the hammer. It's sort of the jack of all trades, similar to the sword and shield. Although the spear has buffs and debuffs in the skill tree like bleed and rend, it has a lot of animation similar to the hatchet. It just feels good to knock enemies away. It feels good to dive onto their face and smack them in the head. It feels really good when you throw a headshot and your cooldowns are reduced. There's a lot of fun factor in what you do with the spear. The damage, 50-50, but it's a dexterity based weapon, so you get the melee factor in there in case you're using other dexterity weapons, but it also benefits from strength. So if you really just like the play style and you want it as a backup weapon, it's available to you if you have a strength build. So therefore, I'm gonna put the spear at an A. It's a jack of all trades like the sword, but more fun and a little closer to the hatchet. Next, we've got the great axe. Man, I want this great axe to be good. I want it to be fun, and I think it's suffered a lot of nerfs, leaving it in a weird space. Early on in the preview events and the betas, the axe could be used for AoE grinding at a crazy rate. You've got the Reaper tree, which allows you to pull from your enemies, and you've got the Mauler, which is more of the AoE, hacky, slashy type of skills. They both have that great axe playstyle that you're looking for in a game in which you are just smashing things over the head and tearing them asunder. It's very much like Warrior from Diablo 3, where you leap in and you just try and kill stuff. It's pretty fun. Where the axe suffers is, it's a lot like the sword. You have really cool animated skills that just get buffed. You can spin a little longer. You can do a little extra damage after you pull them in. You can cause them to bleed a little more. You take less damage during certain conditions. You don't feel it unless you're looking for it or unless you're min-maxing. However, the skills are some of the most fun in the game, so you can't knock it too much. I think it still needs some tuning. I think it was over nerfed, but assuming they can get it back in line with where it needs to be, Great Axe is in the A tier. Fun animations just like the spear. It maybe just suffers from a little lack of utility. Next, the Warhammer. A Smashly favorite, the Warhammer comes with pure, unadulterated destruction. With abilities titled Clear Out and Armor Breaker and Wrecking Ball, the Warhammer does exactly what you expect it to do. Every skill is about smashing something, killing something, moving something out of the way. It's a big old maul and it's gonna hurt ya. Similar to the Great Axe, all of its abilities are very powerful and then they just kind of get buffed. So there's a lot you don't see here with like getting extra speed, maybe damaging armor a little bit more, taking less damage when surrounded by enemies. All great stuff for tanks, don't get me wrong, but nothing you're gonna notice as a single player playing the game trying to have fun. What you will notice is all the smashing. So much smashing. The sounds with this weapon are satisfying. And although you get a little bit of confusion between the skills, it becomes apparent exactly what they do. This one's good for smashing people on the ground. This one's good for smashing people in the face. This one breaks their armor so you can smash them harder. This one creates a shockwave so you can smash people a little farther away. It has one job, but oh my gosh, it does that job well. Warhammer, in terms of fun, it's the S tier for sure. Moving on to our ranged weapons. They're both dexterity based. We're talking the bow and the gun. And this one I'm gonna sort of clump together because I think it's important to acknowledge what they do. Now they're both ranged, they both require ammo. All the ammo has to be crafted or gathered, and you generally just hit stuff that's far away. They both take time to shoot, they both take time to reload, and neither one has any sort of melee component to them. So if you were to try to just be a bow user or just be a musket user, you're gonna be pretty disappointed. You need a second weapon with these weapons. Now, with the right skills and the right build and everything, you could probably kill things before they get to you. If you're in a party or you're in a raid, you generally don't have to worry about pulling aggro. Yeah, you can shoot for as long as you have ammo. But there's a lot of constraints on these weapons and what they do, and so therefore they both functionally do the same thing. Bows have a little bit of lead time on the arrow, as you would expect. Muskets do not. Muskets take much longer to load than the bow, where the bow you can fire stuff off pretty quickly. Muskets therefore do more damage per shot than the bow. If you're the bow user, you're looking to be a bow user. You're shooting multiple arrows, you're making a rain of arrows, you're shooting a poison cloud, which is to shoot people through. You can shoot 3 arrows at once. You just kind of shoot arrows, and that's what you do. In the skirmisher tree, you're focused on moving away, dodging, getting your stamina back. In the hunter tree, you're focused on doing more damage. If you haven't damaged them in a little while, if they're a certain distance away, generally you're just trying to shoot arrows. That's what you do as a bow user. The musket, on the other hand, comes with more utility. If you go down the sharpshooter path with the musket, you're actually going to be focused on doing as much single damage as possible. You can overload your shot, you can get down into a stance, which you are just focused on shooting. Then you can basically play Call of Duty, hit some headshots, do extra damage. It's a lot of fun. Or there's the trapper tree where you're trying to keep people away from you. You throw out bear traps, you throw out little bombs, you shoot people to back them up a little bit. You're trying to maintain that distance such that you can reload and shoot them again. The bow has more flashy animations with the poison shot and the rains and the multiple arrows. The musket has flashier upgrades. I can use 2 traps now instead of 1. I do a big burst of damage. It's just fun to, aim and click and they die. There's no travel time there to the bullet, at least not that I can tell, which makes the musket easier to aim. The arrows can fly and totally whiff past an enemy. Now you've wasted not only a resource, but damage. They're running at you. Especially in solo play, that enemy is running dead on towards you. With a musket, you click their head. With a bow, hopefully you can aim at what's a fairly thin hitbox. Now, I'm not going to say either of these are my particular play style, but I will say that because the musket has more utility, they functionally do the same thing, but the musket has more utility, I'm going to rank it slightly higher than the bow. So bow's going down to C tier, musket's in B tier. Part of my reasoning for shoving that bow down, despite the fun animations like jumping back and rain of arrows and poison shot and all that, enemies get in your face, and they get in your face fast. The musket has stopping power and traps, the bow does not. The bow, you get off some shots and switch to something else. You're trying to get off that weapon. The musket, you can stay on a little bit further, and it has more things to deal with your enemies. So it's just more fun. Tell me how wrong I am, please. All right, we're now moving into our magic weapons. We've got the fire staff, the life staff, and the ice gauntlet. Now up front, one of the fun factors we got to consider is that all 3 of these need mana to function. You have to use the mana for the spells and your basic attacks. So if you're gonna go down the intelligence route, you're gonna immediately find that there is some trouble in the water. You can't just spam attacks like you might be able to do with a melee weapon. This is part of the reason that I say the rapier still has a lot of value. I mean, I find it that fun, but it has a lot of value because if you run out of mana, you switch to a sword and you smack things around a little bit. All of these weapons are pretty fun though. All the magic is pretty fun in New World. So if you're pulling out your fire staff, you've got the options between being a fire mage, which allows you to get sort of the comets and all the bursty damage, or you've got the option of pyromancer, which is more sustained wall of fire, leaving a trail of fire type of stuff. I will admit that the animations aren't quite as explosive as you might see in Final Fantasy, but they all have some weight and some oomph to them. They're all clearly visible. You can see the damage being done with the fire staff. And the flamethrower skill, where you just kind of burn stuff in front of you, it's pretty fun. You get the fire staff very early. I want to say around level 3. So at low level, it can suffer a little bit. You do need a lot of passive skills to get this weapon going. However, once you do, you just blow stuff up. The passives are also more noticeable. You start to see when additional fire is happening. You start to see when your mana regens quickly. Runes get placed on the ground. You make a field of fire around you. I mean, these are all very animated, very visual, very fun effects, especially if you're going for that fire mage, you know, demon spawn type of playstyle. It's very fun. Now, I would like to note that if you play Fire Staff, it only scales off intelligence. I've mentioned kind of 2 stats for most of the weapons thus far. Fire Staff is intelligence and intelligence only. So you do have to sort of invest yourself there. You're also going to be a little bit of a glass cannon because you're going to be wanting to dodge roll more, meaning lighter armor. That can take away some fun for some people. For others who like to kind of stay out of trouble and just blow people up from afar, this is a really fun weapon. Personally, it's an A tier to me. I'm gonna skip over one and talk about the Ice Gauntlet real quick. Now, when I saw the marketing for the Ice Gauntlet, I thought this is the weapon for me, right? You're talking about a close range mage. You're talking about setting up a pylon that can shoot ice out, big old wall of ice. I can make a trail of ice, a dome of ice, a blast of ice in front of me. It sounds fun. In reality, not so much. It's like the difference between a fire mage and an ice mage in WoW. The fire mage does more damage, they're just more fun. The ice mage has more utility. You've got things to block damage. Great. You can slow people down. You can set up area of effects that kind of stick around for a little bit. That's about it. Now you can add passives in here that will begin to slow down your enemies. If you go the pylon side, you can actually, double or triple the health of your pylon, make it attack faster. Enemies can get drawn to it, but in the PvP realm, everyone just kind of ignores it. There's actually a short on my channel right now where I put up a big wall of ice and the guy just kind of runs around it. And that was useless. So that wasn't great. I will say that the fun accelerates with the Ice Gauntlet. As you get deeper into the tree, you start to be able to freeze people. You start to be able to stack your damage on top of itself. There's a lot to like down there. But in the beginning part of the game, this is a very rough weapon to work with, and your mana is going to be drained all the time. Because you're trying to be kind of in a short range with this weapon, you're going to take some hits, like a lot of hits. That makes it less fun. Just like the Fire Staff, this is intelligence only. Man, I really, really like the lore, the mythology, the hype behind this weapon, but it's got to go D tier. Last but not least, our life staff. Our beautiful, beautiful life staff. How we love you so much. The one weapon in the game that can heal you. The one weapon. There are some passives that allow you to recover health based on certain conditions, but this is the only weapon in the entire game that directly heals people. That's it. If you want to heal, you need this weapon. Now, a lot of people have taken up like the Warhammer, and then they'll bring a life staff as well, because passive healing in New World is very, very limited. If you have someone in your party that has a life staff, they are saving your life. Unlike the fire staff, right at the top of the skill tree, you can actually remove the mana cost for attacking with the life staff, meaning your mana doesn't go down from that anymore, so you can use it on everything else. You can send out a projectile that heals allies while damaging enemies. You can revive people. You can set up a zone of healing or send individual healing. You've got absolutely loads of useful skills as well as useful buffs. Just for holding the life staff, I can give my entire party extra health. People who wield the life staff are the most important players in the game. The most important. If you want to be on every single team and have no wait time for anything, wield a life staff. But life staff scales from focus. It is the only weapon out of this entire list that requires the focus stat in order to increase its damage. So if you're gonna play alone, or let's say, you want to contribute to damage in some way, you want to be able to kill something by yourself, you're going to have to put points in focus instead of any of the other stats. Strength, dexterity, intelligence scale everything else in the game. Focus only scales the damage of the life staff. So you have to sacrifice your solo play to enhance your group play. I started this list talking about this is my opinion, this is how I play the game, and I play the game solo a lot because I'm on weird times and I don't have a lot of time to play. So if you are wielding the life staff, you are the most important group member in the game, and that can be really fun. But if you're playing by yourself, this is not a fun weapon. It's not, and most of its abilities really are only beneficial if you're in a party. You can't heal allies if there's no allies to heal. Your projectile doesn't do all that much damage because some of its strength, some of its power is in the fact it can heal and damage. So you're gonna suffer. If you don't put a ton of points into focus, you're gonna suffer using the life staff. It's gonna be a hard game for you. And because dungeons are limited, you have to craft keys to get into dungeons using rare materials. It's not like you can just queue up for a dungeon queue and just be in that all day. It's not like you can just do dungeons to level up. You have to play the game. And because of that, life staff is C tier. Sorry, life staff. So that's it. These over here, these are my rankings. What do you think? I think it's pretty balanced. I think a lot can change through numerical shifts, but I tried to focus on the fun, right? What the animations do, what it feels like to play the weapon, what it feels like to contribute in the game using that weapon, especially focused on solo play. So I feel good about this list. Everything's a little bit everywhere. There's weapons that are similar to each other, like the hammer and an axe, that are in different tiers. Go with this. If you walk out when New World launches and you walk out with a Warhammer and a hatchet, you're gonna have a great time. You are gonna have so much fun with this game. If you walk out with a rapier and an ice gauntlet, like I did, you're gonna suffer. This is gonna be a hard game for you. I thought they were cool weapons. I thought all the damage over time would stack with each other and make it really fun. It didn't. It sucked. It was a hard game. And then I put on a Warhammer and I just crushed everything. Now the good news with New World is that before level 20, you can respec everything for free. You can respec all of your skill trees for your weapons for free before level 10 in each individual weapon. So you can play the way you like, you can gather every weapon. In fact, the game will shove all these weapons at you early on so that way you have the opportunity to try them and determine what you like to play as. You're gonna start with that sword and shield, but they're gonna give you pretty much everything else in no time flat. So I hope this tier list was helpful to you in making up your mind. Tell me what you agree with. Tell me what you disagree with. What are you gonna rock? What are you taking out there in New World when it launches at the end of this month? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, do all the things that helps my channel out, helps this video get to other people. And until next time, see ya.